I'm broadcasting now about the Dieppe raid at a time when details are just becoming available. I'd like to say this to you in Canada. We've suffered heavy losses, and I saw our men die, but never have I seen men die more bravely or fight with such great heart as our Canadian troops. The word Dieppe may rank with Vimy Ridge in our history, and our hats are off to the Royal Canadian Engineers and the Royal Canadian Army Medical Corps and the South Saskatchewan Regiment and the Queen's Own Cameron Highlanders of Winnipeg and the Royal Regiment from Toronto, the Essex Scottish from Windsor and the Royal Hamilton Light Infantry and les Fusiliers de Montreal. A lot of those men will never return to Canada. I believe a lot more will return after the war if the German announcement of 1,500 prisoners is correct. And added to the above, the officers and men of the Calgary tanks, whose story is one of the greatest that can be told about our Canadian part in this action. This was a combined operation, and I've spoken about the Army. Playing an equal part with our troops were the Air Force, the Marines, Commandos, and the Navy. I'm trying to find out now what percentage of the Air Force was Canadian, because I feel sure it was a great percentage. At least 9 aircraft fell to Canadian guns, and many more were damaged. What a marvelous job they did in the face of intense fire from accurate and powerful German shore and ack-ack batteries. Our losses haven't been sustained without reason. We've learned a most valuable lesson which may enable us to free the continent of Europe and end the war. We know now how the German system of coastal defenses operates and how best to attack. We know the tremendous weight of artillery the enemy can bring to bear on the beach. That was the purpose of the raid, as set out officially and told before we set sail, to defenses and Germans and to obtain information. We did all those things which the Germans have never been able to do to us. We moved large forces across the channel unnoticed by the enemy. We landed men on all 6 beaches, and we landed tanks in our new tank-carrying vessels, and one of which I was a passenger. Costly as it has been to Canada, the raid was definitely a success. Without this experience, a second front would have been suicide. Now let me start from the beginning. The plan, of course, was a closely guarded secret, and the men weren't briefed until they were on board the ships. Although I didn't travel with the Royal Hamilton Light Infantry, I was present when their colonel, a fine figure of a man from London, Ontario, came on board and told them, "Men, we're going into action. We're going to do what we came over to do, get a crack at Jerry." And then he told them the nature of the operation and what was expected of each man. There were no heroics, no delighted yells of whoopee. The men were quiet and asked questions. It struck me that the questions were those that a general might ask when being told of an operation for the first time. What were the coast defenses likely to be? What aircraft protection would they get? I liked the spirit. We set sail in craft of all types under the cover of darkness. I was with the Calgary tanks in one of the new tank-carrying craft. It was a lovely night and reminded me of home. Hardly had we set sail and our padre collected all the men together in the bow of the ship, standing in front of a new type of tank they were using, and he read from the 6th chapter of Ephesians with the aid of a flashlight. "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore, take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness." In a few words, he told us that in a few hours we would be striking our first blow to bring a sign of deliverance to the people of Europe, and the reason for this service was because we would need God's help. The men were quiet, as we slid out into the darkness under the lovely stars. I could read my watch in the light of the half moon, and soon we said goodbye to the dark shores of Britain. I had a chat with the officer commanding our particular troop of tanks, and he told me about the hard work they'd put in for weeks to get them ready for this action. He was confident in them and in his men, to whom he said all credit must go. And now I'm just going to quote from the notes I took as we went along, some written in the darkness and some written in heavy gunfire, so they are now smeared and dirty from the cordite. And all the time I kept wishing I had a microphone in my hand, so taking notes in this way was my only substitute. On the way over, I went to sleep for a while, lying in my trench coat on a coil of rope on the deck, and then I went up on the open bridge with the young captain, a sub-lieutenant in the RNVR. And now for my notes, just as they were written. AA tracers, like red sparks, and there's a heavy red glow extending down the coast. Our bombers are at work. More heavy flash of coastal guns and bombs. Our aircraft are flying in close to the water and over us. And now dawn is breaking, also like a heavy barrage to the east. There are puffs of smoke in the sky, evidently from heavy German AK batteries, and the ships are weaving in. Our lads are calm, and the tank men, wearing black berets and sitting comfortably anywhere, are watching the action. The sky is becoming full of aircraft, and the bombardment is becoming intense. Heavy thuds are shaking us, even this far out to sea. The captain is calmly steering us along. Port tent, midships. One bright fire is burning on the port horizon. Our medical men have put on their steel helmets, and the guns are quieter. Perhaps the commandos have landed and are fixing them. The destroyers are holding their fire and sinking along beside us. The ships are spread out behind us in long lines with gun crews mounted, each flying a black flag and a white ensign. There are fighter patrols like flocks of geese high up, and the bombers are scurrying home in the low haze over the water. The fighters look like swallows, but in geese formation. It's now 5:50 in the morning. Fast troop-carrying ships are starting to pass us now. And there's a French chasseur carrying French commandos. The coast has suddenly loomed up in front of us with its white hills and its cliffs, and it looks like a race to see who'll get in first, get into action first. The sky is streaked with fighting fools, and so is the ocean. The destroyers are laying a smoke screen to windward, and now they're turning broadside and they're plastering the town with their guns. The smoke screen is lifting, and I can see ships everywhere. The small troop-carrying landing craft are moving in lines under the artillery barrage. A Spitfire has just crashed off our starboard bow and into the sea like a stone. We could see the pilot trying to get out, but he couldn't. The troops are heading for the beaches on either side of the town, the Royal Regiment to the left, and the South Saskatchewan and Queen's Own Camerons to the right. The Hamiltons and the Essex Scottish are going in the center, and we're following. 2 Messerschmitts have just tried to attack us, and the ship behind us has just shot one of them into the sea. Our tank troop captain has come up to the bridge to warn the captain that it's only a few minutes until our 0 time. He wants to get going. So we're hoisting our signal now, meaning we're shore bound, and in we go. It's now 6:45. Planes are everywhere overhead, but the shore guns are firing at us and at the small troop-carrying craft ahead of us. I can see casualties. Men are in the water. Our tanks are warming up, and they're starting to climb the ramp, which will be lowered like a drawbridge when we reach the beach. Machine gun bullets are whining around us, but our guns are cracking too at the aircraft over us. A tank landing craft is getting its tanks off behind the troops storming the beach, and heavy bombs have just dropped astern of us. It's a heavy Junkers, and she's trying to stagger into shore. She's full of lead from our guns. The tank landing craft ahead of us got its tanks ashore, but she's sinking now, trying to get out. And we're being stopped by orders from going in, and destroyers are laying a smoke screen around us. There's a heavy German gunfire from a tobacco factory. I can see it sweeping the beach. Another Messerschmitt is down. The Ack fire is wonderful, and a heavy bomber has just been driven off. He was trying to sneak in on our right, but a destroyer's guns got that, Jerry. Our tank men are disappointed, but now comes an order to try to go in again, and they're delighted. The German shore batteries are still active. They're firing at us. 4 Focke-Wulf bombers have just dived on us, and 2 of them disappeared in flame. Our barrage is unbelievable, and I'm covered in black soot. Shells are falling on all sides of us. We can't get into the beach, and we're ordered again to retire. 3 pilots are coming down by parachute. Another tank landing craft has managed to get in, but has been hit. Some casualties have just been brought out to our ship, and the padre of the Fusiliers de Montreal told me about trying to get on shore. Men were killed all around him, and one lieutenant had a bullet in his arm while he was trying to push the padre down. It's now 9:25. The Germans on the cliffs are even throwing hand grenades on our ships below. 9 Heinkel bombers just passed overhead, and I saw their bombs leave the aircraft, but I was too interested to watch the gunfire than to care where the bombs landed. They were aimed at the destroyers ahead of us, but they missed them. We were heavily attacked again, and the convoy guns have just brought down 2 more Junkers. There's just a sort of flash of flame, and the bombers come down like leaves in the wind. And now dive bombers are attacking us. One of them has just been shot into the sea. Strong reinforcements of our fighters are arriving, and they're flying low around us to protect us from the dive bombers. We can't get into the beach. We've tried again, but bombs and gunfire are driving us out. I've just been knocked down by a heavy bomb. In fact, a stick of 4 bombs. I've very near missed to starboard. Some of our men are wounded. One of them is dead. Our fighters are wonderful, and they're fearless, and they're trying to protect our men on the beaches who are being re-embarked. Our aircraft are suffering heavily, and I've seen several come down in flames over Dieppe. The wounded are being brought off, but we hear that we have landed on every beach. Evidently, the engineers have suffered heavily, and were unable to blast away for the tanks for about an hour. The tanks formed a square on the beach, and they're protecting our men from being re-embarked. The colonel of our tanks has attacked a machine gun post on foot. The South Saskatchewans got in safely, but the Queen's Own Camerons following them have been hit by 6-inch howitzers, and there are casualties. I'm listening to our tank shortwave equipment, and I know they're fighting like fools on shore. I can hear one of our tank captains saying, "Come on over, boys, we're killing lots of Heinrichs." We're ordered to maneuver out of the harbor. It's afternoon now, but the destroyers are remaining behind just a few hundred yards off the shore, and they're sending in small boats to bring out our men who can get away. They're wonderful. We've been here 8 hours now, and small craft are streaming out under bombs and gunfire. Well, those are just quotations from my notes as I wrote them down. I wish I could continue, but my time's up. I wish I could tell you about the journey home and the hundreds of stories I know about personal acts of bravery. I wish I could tell you now how we feel as we wait for final news. But I'm going to be broadcasting again later tonight with several other war correspondents who'll be with me. And we may be able to give you the full picture then between us. It seems reasonably certain that our losses are as heavy as they were at Hong Kong. I hope you in Canada, despite those losses, will feel very proud that our men have been able to play, at last, the part they've wanted to play. I do know that they've fought well and that things which seem to have exceeded the limits of human courage and endurance, have been done to protect our troops during the fight and to get them off after it was over. Those of us who've managed to get back, even wounded, feel very lucky indeed. It's been a bitter, hard fight.